Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Rader's next victim would be someone that lived not far from his home, and this would be 62-year-old Dolores Davis. He would begin stalking her and give her the code name in his writing, Project Dogside, mainly because of the dog kennels that would be placed around the north side of her home. He would make various trips over to Dolores's home many times without finding any success in a way to break into her house, but would eventually work out a plan on January 19th, 1991. And just like with Marinate Hedge, he would actually use a Trapper Scouts outing as a ruse, as a way to build an alibi for the night that he would decide to commit the murder, as around that time of the year was the Trappers' Dead of Winter outing, which is an annual event. The outing would be placed at Harvey County Park West, and Rader would actually go there ahead of time from the other campers to set up the camp, where it is said that the rest of the campers were scheduled to arrive later that afternoon or night, or sometime in the morning. Rader would later say that prior to this, he would actually tell the other counselors or adults that when they arrived that he may have had to go to his home to retrieve some things and may not be at the camp when they arrived. Rader would say he would do this as a way to build an alibi or a cover story. He would also say that on that particular night it was extremely cold, so instead of changing inside the tent, he would actually get in his vehicle, drive to his parents' house, and change out of his trapper uniform into some regular clothes. Rader would then drive to a Baptist church on East and 61st Street that he had received keys from due to his experience with the Boy Scouts. He would do this for his final preparation. Rader would then say that he would cut across from some wheat fields and walk through a cemetery as a way to sneak in through Dolores's home. And he would also recall that it was so cold that his feet had actually started to begin hurting, and because of how cold it was, he would quickly change his mind from breaking in a more quiet route to actually breaking through the glass window. Rader would then say he would arrive at the home and he would actually watch Dolores through the windshield through a blind that she had actually drawn down. And when he arrived, which is around 10:30 to 11 p.m., it is said that Dolores would be reading a book in her living room. And Rader would sit and wait for Dolores to go to bed, and after a period of time, she would actually turn out the lights to go to bed. After Rader was sure that Dolores had finally fallen asleep, he would take a cinder block and throw it through her window. It said after doing this that this would wake Dolores up to where she would come downstairs yelling and screaming, "What happened to my house? What did you do to my house?" Rader would use two stories, the first of which would tell Dolores that he had thought he had hit her house with his car, and he would also tell her that he was a wanted man and that he had just escaped and he was looking for food and shelter, on top of money and a vehicle to leave. He would also tell Dolores that his intention was to come in, get some food, warm up because it is extremely cold, get the keys to her car, and leave. And he would say that he was going to tie her up and that she needed to cooperate. To which Dolores would tell Rader, "You're not coming inside my house." And it's at this point that Rader would tell her that he had not only weapons but a firearm and that she was going to cooperate. It's at this point that Dolores would cooperate and she would let him in the house, and he would take the keys to her car and begin fumbling around the kitchen, acting as if he was looking for food to eat. Around the time that he was fumbling around the kitchen, it is speculated by Rader that he assumed that Dolores Davis thought that he was going to unalive her, because it's around this time that he would be fummaging through the kitchen and she would beg him over and over, "Don't unalive me, don't unalive me." It's around this time that Rader would take off one of her pantyhoses and start asphyxiating her with it, to which she would tell Rader that she was having people coming in at some point in time that night, which would also make Rader rush instead of taking his time as he normally did. This, of course, would be a lie that Dolores would tell Rader as a way to get him to stop and to leave the house, but it was very unsuccessful. Rader had originally planned that he was going to take pictures of Dolores as he had done with Marinate Hedge and do what he normally did with those crimes. but because he thought people were coming over, he would be rushing. So after he has asphyxiated Dolores Davis, he would quickly wrap her body in a bed sheet and drag her body from her house into the trunk of her own car. It is where he would drive her body over to the K-Dot Lake, and he would drop her body in around some bushes. After he was finished, he would take Dolores' car back to her house, and he would throw the keys on top of the roof. He would do this as this was one of the things he had done when he had actually unalived the Ontario family, which would bring the connection to that this was BTK. Rader would later tell investigators that he had rushed to get back to the camp because he had time constraints. This is one of the many times that Dennis Rader would refer to his family life as a hindrance from keeping him from what he really wanted to do. Dolores Davis' body was actually found on February 1st, 1991 by a 15-year-old boy, Nelson Schock, who had been walking his dog, and when the dog would actually take off and run under the bridge, he would go under the bridge to go look for his dog after the dog would not return after calling his dog multiple times, to which he would find the body of Dolores Davis. After 1991, there would not be any more murders by Dennis Rader, as he would just fall off the face of the map. One of the main reasons as being that he would actually quit working for ADT, and he would continue working for a dog catcher and a compliance officer. It is theorized that after not working for the security systems, that because he had worked as a dog catcher or compliance officer, he did not have the tools or the ability to sneak into homes as he had did before. Although some would say that he was very well mannered, there were very few people who had worked with him as a dog catcher and would refer to him as a bully and a tyrant. There were actually several women that actually had to put a restraining order on Dennis Rader for the sole fact that they had caught him trying to stalk them while they were going home. It is possible that these women were possible victims that Rader had thought about unaliving after so many years of not doing anything. And the media and the police wouldn't hear of BTK for another 14 years. But before we get into that, there have been several suspected murders that have been linked to Dennis Rader, on top of the 10 that he had already committed. On August 23, 2023, the Associated Press would release that Dennis Rader was the prime suspect in 2 unalivings, one being in Oklahoma and the other one being in Missouri. One of the reasons being that over the period of time that Dennis Rader had been performing his crimes, he would actually collect trophies from his victims. On top of not only just taking pictures of these victims, he would also take things such as their driver's license, jewelry, as a way for him to just kind of relive the crimes that he committed. Some of the trophies that the police had uncovered would be trophies they would not recognize, but would be almost directly linked to several of these unsolved murders. One of those being 16-year-old Cynthia Dawn Kinney, who was last seen in Osage on June 23, 1976, where she was last seen at the Osage laundromat. And it is said that around 9:30 a.m., Kinney would get into a faded 1965 Plymouth Belvedere. In 2023, the sheriff, Eddie Verdon, would say for 3 reasons that Dennis Rader was the prime suspect. One of being that around the time Dennis Rader was in the Boy Scouts or helping with the Boy Scouts, and there would actually be an outing in that particular area. The second reason being that on all of his writings, there would be a particular writing where Dennis Rader would use a term, bad wash day. And also because of the fact that there would be some pings on ADT, and at the time, Rader had been working for that security company. He would also release information that it was always a fantasy of his to kidnap a woman at a laundromat. Now, Rader would deny any involvement in this murder, but the Sheriff Verdon would also say that he believes that is because of the fact that he would be tried again in Oklahoma and would be given the death penalty in Oklahoma. But as I said before, the world would not hear of BTK for at least 14 years, where the police would use Dennis Rader's ego as a weapon.